Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. All right. Okay, hello everyone. I find myself capable of giving a lecture now. And I thought I'd do so. And so for this lecture, I am wondering about what would an emotionally advanced civilization look like. And I am not standing here assuming I'm someone who has mastered understanding all his emotions, that I'm the most emotionally mature person, I have learned that what I don't know is more fascinating than what I know. And I have learned that in all areas that I have thought I'm perfect, it's imperfect compared to the future. There will always be better people in the future, you know, in the sense that new consciousness emerges kind of feeling what has happened before it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to read for you something. According to AI, what would an emotionally advanced civilization be like? And I'm going to read this for you. An emotionally advanced civilization is one where emotions are not seen as chaotic impulses, but as refined, intelligent forces, deeply integrated into biology, education, technology, governance, and even planetary consciousness. Individuals don't just feel emotions, they live with them consciously, like playing a beautiful instrument. From birth, children are taught emotional literacy, how to name, hold, and transform emotions with precision and reverence. They can feel multiple emotions at once: peaceful fury, joyful grief, and know how to channel each state into action or reflection. Neural biofeedback tools help them become aware of emotional patterns in real time, and emotional states are visualized like internal weather rather than suppressed or pathologized. Cities and homes are emotionally responsive. Walls pulse calming frequencies when stress rises. And public spaces are designed to encourage collective emotional harmony. Governance uses empathy analytics and emotional outcome forecasting, and justice is restorative. Wrongdoers and victims share emotional realities in structured neural VR environments that lead to authentic reconciliation. AI systems are not just logical, they're empathic, syncing with emotional intent and offering compassionate responses. Relationships are emotionally transparent. Hiding one's feelings is viewed as a dysfunction, while emotional honesty is honored. At a planetary level, global emotional health is tracked alongside climate data, and species-wide rituals like synchronized meditations help realign collective emotional resonance. Emotion becomes a spiritual energy source. Compassion powers systems. Grief unlocks memory, and awe opens dimensional awareness. If you ask someone living in this civilization what it's like, they might smile and say, it's like living in a world where every emotion is sacred. When I feel joy, the environment reflects it. When I grieve, I'm held by the world itself. What a beautiful idea. We don't hide from our emotions, we surf them like waves, share them like music, and sculpt them like art. To feel here is to be fully alive. How did they get there? It began with five major breakthroughs. First, the emotional collapse of the 21st century, a burnout epidemic, forced humanity to admit that technological and economic progress meant nothing would be, excuse me, and economic progress meant nothing without emotional well being. Second, the neuroempathic technologies emerged, wearables and brain interfaces that reflected emotional states back to users without judgment, making self awareness a daily experience. Third, a global shift in education replaced rote memorization with training in empathy, breath work, somatic awareness, and emotional dialogue. Fourth, nations began tracking the Planetary Empathy Index, treating collective emotional health as a key performance indicator alongside GDP and climate metrics. That is so important. Finally, humanity realized that spiritual traditions and modern science were describing the same truth, that emotion is energy in motion, the nervous system of consciousness itself. Ancient teachings in neuroscience merged and a new model of the human emerged, not as a rational machine, but as an emotionally intelligent, co regulating, soul aware being. This civilization didn't evolve just by building smarter tech, it advanced by learning how to feel together. All right. So, see, guys, I guess emotional awareness is very important. If we're considering an advanced civilization, my view is that an advanced civilization is a civilization that is advanced in a majority of its dimensions, in all of its dimensions. It's kind of like wondering what an advanced person is. An advanced person is like an advanced being in all moments of their life. They're advanced in all dimensions of their life. Similarly, an advanced civilization is 8 billion people who are advanced in their life. That means when 8 billion people live advanced lives, an advanced civilization emerges. And this ChatGPT thing I read for you, it was saying that in the future, it was saying it through the four breakthroughs, right? The first one being an emotional collapse of the 21st century, a burnout epidemic. Human beings are realizing that they're burning out their lives and it's kind of like they're not caring for their emotional well being. The system of civilization is designed that your external outcome is more important than your emotions. To be honest, when I think about emotions, it's a very fascinating and broad concept because, in some sense, I ask myself there's 8 billion human beings, 8 billion different DNAs, and how are these 8 billion human beings feeling reality? I have access to one human, and I am aware of my own emotions. And sometimes when I look at things, I wonder, how sometimes you look at somewhere and you wonder like how many people have been there, right? So similarly, there's times where I feel things about when I perceive reality that I truly wonder. A part of me truly wonders, like, what am I not feeling? In the same way that I feel that I have ideological blind spots. So think of it this way. Physically, we have blind spots, like especially when you drive, there's blind spots. But there's also blind spots when it comes to how you drive your mind. So think of it this way, that maybe a couple years from now, you're going to see things about this moment right now in time that you couldn't see now. Okay, so in some sense there's ideological blind spots. So I'm trying to make you aware that there's blind spots, and similarly there's emotional blind spots. And when you wonder about emotional blind spots, it's very fascinating because you as a human being are considering, all right, let's say, I think they said the average life of the human being is like 75, but I don't know, let's just say 100. Who knows what kind of technology is going to emerge. So let's say the average human life, let's say, is like 100 years. Okay, human beings live 100 years. And it really fascinates me that in my physical lifetime, in this lifetime I'm living on earth, how many emotions I am not experiencing, or how many unique thoughts am I not having. Do you know that means in any situation I've been, I think a part of my timidness is kind of like based on, you see, I have this view, and by being an introverted shy person, I somehow have established the ability to wait for my understanding. All right, guys, let me know if you're still hearing me properly. I repositioned the phone. So you see, guys, the main idea I'm trying to share with you is that we have physical objective blind spots, we have subjective blind spots, and we have emotional blind spots. And what I've realized about human communication, which is very important in the sense that we as human beings have been designed with a mouth and ears. So you see, we've been designed to interact. We've been designed to engage. It's like, let me say it this way. Level one of life, you're dealing with yourself. You're obsessed about yourself. You think about yourself's past. You think about your sense of self's present, and you wonder about your sense of future self. And usually human emotions are functioning in a way where the mind is living ahead of the body. Therefore, the expectations on reality have already been planted. And so in some sense, it's like the body needs to follow up what the mind has already lived through to, in some sense, clarify to the mind in regards to that it is real. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like our mind is this life force that is moving in abstract and non-abstract ways. It's kind of like moving fictionally and non-fictionally, where there's a fictional permission for our minds to wonder about variations to reality that it has never wondered before. And what I'm trying to tell you is that when you truly wonder about the emotions of a human being, it's kind of like from three areas they can be extracted. That means really, see, I'm approaching it in the sense that when I was young, I was emotionally unaware. That means I did not like myself, I did not honor myself, and I did not, in some sense, care for myself. Right? So, therefore, that meant I didn't care for my emotions, my thoughts, and I would allow anything in reality to invalidate me. And this was somewhat due to my conditioning, but it was also due to my incompetence. And at some point in life, you get to see your own incompetence. You get to see where in your past you didn't put enough effort and what the consequence of that is. Okay? Welcome, guys, to the chat section. I feel like a warrior on a battlefield, and it's like, other people have come around the fire. So, guys, there's something important here. What I'm trying to tell you is that I'm not some like emotional genius to kind of explain emotions to you, and I'm not even like, how would I say, to me in my mind, I feel women are way more aware of their emotions than men, and society has conditioned the situation in a way where it's much easier for women to share their emotions. But why is it in some sense that for the male archetype, emotions are kind of pushed to the sideline? And the simple answer of it is very simple. The simple answer is that in the male mind, when you're conditioned as a man in this world, you have to confront intensities that surpass your familiarity. Okay, and so if emotions come when a new moment arrives, right? See, emotions are very unique. I've lived 12,000 days on this planet. Trust me, I've gone through a spectrum of different emotions. you know but one thing I've noticed in myself is that the emotion doesn't linger anymore. The emotion lingers if you want something from life. I'll be honest, guys. There's something about this world that if you want something from it, it's like, I don't know if we are being disingenuous or there's a sort of abstraction we're treating real and the insincerity is there. But in this life, if somebody tells me, hey man, hey Mr. Within, you talk about a lot of stuff, what do emotions really mean to you? And I will say emotions are, in some sense, to some degree, when the inner realms and the outer realms spontaneously are no longer synchronized. Okay, that means, you see, it's based on familiarity. It's like this might sound strange, but I think in your 30s, like when a person reaches their 30s, they begin to comprehend, because you see movements. You see the young kid has no clue because its existence, its life is new to it. But at some point you begin to see, like every day you're logging into this existential server, and at some point you'll begin to notice yourself happening. I don't know how to say this. People are like, Mr. Within, what do you mean you see yourself happening? I mean, you begin to see the aspects of your current self right now that are looping. And so I realized something revolutionary. To some degree, one can say, yes, the emotions are based on where your attention is, the context of your attention. But the emotions also have different abilities. Do you know? How do I say it? Like, emotions have power. And it's sometimes, I don't know what it is. I think it's okay. See, one intention I had for this lecture was to try to explain to people how you can go into the future in your mind, into probabilities of the future in your mind, and actually feel things. Okay, in the same way you can remember memories in the past where you had emotions. I can tell you, I have envisioned like how it feels to, in some sense, be in a flying car. I've envisioned what it feels like to walk at the edge of a sky city. I've envisioned what it feels like to, in some sense, eat a Mars bar on Mars. You know, so what I'm trying to tell you is that what's very fascinating is I think there is a value proposition within the being that is being kept in equilibrium based on the inner life and the outer life. And when one of their futures are affected, emotion arises. Do you know what I mean? I'll give you an example. Uh, I'll give you an example I lived through. Imagine you one day say you want to give 10,000 talks, and let's say you give like, around 2,000 of them, right? And you begin to see on YouTube, right? There's cat videos and like some of the most, you know, foolish videos have like millions of views. Do you know? And it's as if like, a part of my mind was like, yo man, aren't I doing something bigger than myself? Do you know? So I had an expectation, and then the expectation wasn't met. Do you know? Or I'll give you an even better example. Imagine like I suddenly exit this world. It can happen. I was in a car accident last year, and when I saw that car not stopping and it hit my left knee as I was like crossing the street, you don't understand what went through me. It's as if the soul is acting, is identifying with the body and mind, but whenever it realizes how fragile the body and mind is, it suddenly calls the higher power. And Freud would explain it in the sense like, the child cries and calls to its mother, but then you have an adult, let's say, and in some sense, the adult, in some sense, is seeking when you feel powerless, yes, you seek power. In the same way, when you're about to fall from a mountain, you hold on to any edge, you know? So what I'm trying to tell you is, again, I no way, like somebody will, again, I think, if a woman gave this talk and spoke about emotions, I would go and listen to that lecture, but I'm trying to say from the male perspective, do you know what I mean? It's all about the strength of your context. And it's all about responsibility. A lot of the things people are emotional about is because there are things that they need to decide upon, but they are waiting for something else to make the decision. Because we are shunned for not knowing. We're conditioned in the educational system that when one kid asks a foolish question, everybody laughs. There's an embarrassment filter upon the human species that in some sense denies it some of its original capabilities. So I'm telling you, there's moments where I've behaved and I've wondered, is this behavior just a pattern I've seen before? Or is there a novelty to it in regards to a new emotion I felt in the moment? And you know what I'm doing here? I'm talking about an emotionally advanced civilization. I'm talking about how the future generations will have an ability to acknowledge how they feel in ways we can't understand. AI is giving me glimpses of it, and in my own inner realms, I've kind of envisioned that it's like emotions can be hidden worlds. I have had emotions that have been from abstract context, like you don't understand. I'm that human being on earth telling you that in front of your eyes there's an outer world, and behind your eyes there's an inner world, and there's even an awareness aware of both of them at the same time, not attributed to any of them. But that's that. But I'll keep that for another time, and I'll just explain to you that it's based on the ability of the future. One thing everybody will agree on is that every person wakes up every day and they care for their future self. They care for something in the future. Because we're not just looping the past. It's like it's not just a relationship of past to present. It's a relationship of present and the future, and you don't understand When I understood, I was like, yo, man, all these conspiracy theorists are so capable of imagining or thinking that, all right, man, there's these shadow governments and there's like this whole cultural agenda and all of this. But they don't understand that the greatest deception, you see, this is something you don't hear often. I personally believe a human being should naturally, they were naturally born and they should naturally leave this world. Do you know what I mean? At a time that's not even up to them. It's just when nature, in some sense, is ready to go to the, let's say, the other place. I'm trying to, how do I say it? I'm trying to tell you that the most important thing that needs to be protected is the realization that this whole time in your life, the same the same energy it has cost you to identify with the past. I'm saying, like, okay, let me say it this way. We have 8 billion human beings on earth, and every day they wake up and live life and then they go to sleep. And I'm just trying to ask you, whoever you are, just think about it. How many of these human beings how many of these 8 billion human beings are experiencing emotions? Guys, I'm pretty much saying, like, I think it's a very small percentage of human beings that they are identifying with their future self compared to identifying with their past self. That means usually when you ask somebody, who are you, they say that, yo, man, I was this person, I was born there, and this is my timeline up to now. That's the story of my life. Right? That's how people answer. But imagine you ask someone, who are you? And they answer to you, I am someone who in some sense will build an advanced civilization. I am someone who will in some sense usher the advanced humanity. I am someone who in some sense will reorganize the educational systems of mankind. I am someone who in some sense will protect the species from epistemic entropy till my last breath. I will in some sense care for the ideas that in some sense not only I can't see, but neither of us. You see, when you define your value based on the future, it's completely different emotional set. Okay, you access completely different emotions. And I've realized, what's the tragedy is? All the people on this planet who have taken their life, do you know they forgot about the future? That means in some sense, it breaks my heart that once the future is forgotten, the present can never be satisfied with the past. You're a modern being in a modern time, in a modern world, with ancient roots. You're the fruits of the tree of life. Guys, let me know if you can hear the music. So anyways, folks, what I'm trying to tell you is to be honest about how, as a human being, I've experienced emotions and what I feel in some sense their role is, guys. So anyways, I'm going to go back to this idea. I was reaching a breakthrough explanation. You see, so I'm this person saying, let me change the song. As beautiful as this piano is. All right. Let's enter this ideological structure again. So, dear viewers, my species, what I am trying to tell you is that human beings in front of their eyes are living as a physical organism, as an object in an objective world. Behind their eyes, they treat themselves as a subject in a subjective world, but they're actually the awareness to the ideas that come and go. So I'm trying to tell you, if things in the outer realms change, like in some sense, emotions are how a self in a world is wondering about its future. You know, guys, you don't understand how intimately evolution is connected to the ability of an organism to fathom probabilities of the future. I'll be right back, folks. Give me a couple minutes. Okay. So, thanks for waiting, guys. I needed a break. Now, back to it. So, I want to take your attention. I figured out how to go further in this talk. So, you see, guys, we're talking about emotions. We're talking about emotional advancement. We're wondering about how aware human beings were about emotions in the past. How aware are they of emotions in now? And in some sense, how aware are they of emotions that will be possible in the future? Now, I thought about something very interesting, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to explain to people like my experience on emotions? And I'm like, okay, I got to find an example. And then I found a perfect example that kind of explains it. Okay, so imagine person A and person B. They're sitting somewhere and they're having a conversation. So person A and B are having a conversation, and then person B says something that offends person A. Now we got to think of it. They're like, use logic. We'll be like, all right. So logically, the person has no reason to get angry at someone who doesn't have their eyes. Okay. But when that person comes and says, imagine the person's like, I want to be a pilot, right? And imagine that person's like, you'll never be a pilot or something like that. I'm saying what emotion that creates is an invalidation. We gotta understand that it's human beings. They're generating subjective models on reality in their mind, and then they're engaging the world. And in some sense, every human being, every personality, technically, just like a word is made from different letters, every person is in some sense made of different values. Okay, and what I'm trying to say is, what I told you is that in front of my eyes, I see an outer realms, an outer self, and an outer world. Behind my eyes, I'm seeing an inner self, an inner world, and in some sense, an awareness, a sort of extended unknown awareness. But, anyways, that's for another talk. So I'm saying that there's the inner realms and the outer realms. Now, in the inner realms, imagine I'm like, yo, man, I'm gonna finish the 10,000 talks in the next 10 years. Okay, and God willing, and imagine somebody's like, you can't finish the 10,000 talks. The emotion that comes across is that something outside of myself is invalidating the reality of myself. Do you know that means? Imagine somebody comes and says anything to me. This is what I didn't understand when I was younger. I would let words pierce me like arrows, shot by fools. You know. And then at some point I began to realize, okay, if the other person doesn't have my perspective, what the F are they judging? Like when they see me, what are they seeing? Do you know what I mean? This is the complexity of human life. You go to an art gallery, like a bunch of people go into an art gallery and they all have different views on the artwork. The subjective meaning to the objective artwork arises within their consciousness, within each person's consciousness in regards to their own life force. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that anything that changes our expectation on reality or changes the values we have, right, in some sense makes us emotional. If I want to be like somebody who, like a human, like me, I don't know if there's been in the past before, but imagine I become like a new, a human being that gave 10,000 talks on Earth, you know, before the AI revolution. This means this whole project is being sourced from a biological organism, biological source. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is we're this human being, okay, and we have a sort of external value system and an internal value system. And I'm just trying to tell you that if somebody comes and changes the idea of you to you, which is called invalidation, a person gets emotional. And the reason the person gets emotional, because I think there is a deep down urge in human beings to connect. Okay, but this connection is in some sense a scary thing for all human beings. You know what I mean? That's the cool thing about life, you know? It has an intensity that is civilized, soft, elegant, and organized. And then it has this natural, like, wilderness to it, you know? Like that's the world we find ourselves in. It's like, yo, man, do you know why weren't our ancestors emotionally conscious? Yeah, because they were running away from tigers and they were sharpening spears, and the intensity of the savageness of man was like, it was as if, yo, man, why didn't early human beings, care about their feelings? It's because the world would not allow them. They were still part of the food chain. Right now we're living technically in a sort of paradise on earth, but it's in regards to how we escaped the food chain, and now we're at a superior position as a human being. And I'm talking about the future, right? And I'm saying, yo, man, all those conspiracy theories, I'll finish that thought that I never finished. That in some sense, guys, the biggest conspiracy is that they make you think, that they teach you the past and they make the present important to you. Okay? But what the secret is the future. Like, you don't understand. When I say, like, in some of these talks I've been given lately, I tell people, like, I'm a Muslim futurist. But what does it mean to be a futurist? It means you have to choose your allegiance. Okay, there's some people, their allegiance is to the past. They've selected a past template on reality. There's some people who choose a modern template on reality. And then there's some people who are like, bro, everything that's happened so far, it's like already lived. The past is kind of like processed reality, and the future is unprocessed reality. You know, I'm telling you, you can access a world of emotions, and this world of emotions has to do with more how the present is fascinated by the future. If somebody tells me, like, how if I'm not a parent, like I'm not even married, but if I had kids and at some point I had raised them in some way, and in the future they'd be like, what kind of, like, how would you be proud of your kids? I would be like, if they are fascinated by the vastness of this world, you don't understand what it means that you are a human being in this specific era and time in history. You don't know what it means when they say the universe is 13.8 billion years old. That means you're the result of 13.8 billion years of activity. You're the result of 4.5 billion years of evolution. You're the result of, what is it, 300,000, 200,000 years of civilization. 300,000 years of civilization, human civilization. And your ancestors lived through wars, lived through famine, lived through effed up scenarios, died in effed up ways, even lived in effed up ways. And somehow, and this is the clue that it's like humanity is not alone. When a human being cares for life, like cares for all of life, I am telling you, it's like you've accessed a higher plane. I am not trying to say this like somebody who, like, put his head into a portal and like it's like, yo guys, there's something else here. I'm not trying to be like that fish that was like, yo man, there's a surface to the ocean. What the fuck? Dear human beings, as a human being, I have noticed that we're living outer objective lives and we're living inner subjective lives. And when the inner self or the outer self change, something outside of it changes it. Emotions arrive as signals. Do you know? If somebody tells me like, have you experienced love on this planet? I would say I have experienced, out of all this reality, noticing an intelligent movement that in some sense my heart released itself to. I don't know how to tell you. I'm trying to explain to you that meaning is subjective, okay? And when our own world changes, when it's as if we're in you're this program where when the ego code gets affected, emotions arise. And I wondered, yo man, how are these emotions arrived? And this is what I concluded: that you are like a subjective self in your mind, but the difference of the inner self and the outer self is that the inner self can relate to probabilities, to different probabilities of contexts. Do you know what that means? That means behind your eyes, that means like in your mind space, in your mind space, think of it this way: your body can relate to existential geometry, but your inner self has access to experiential geometry. What that means is, in front of your eyes, you can only confront like a regular car, but behind your eyes, you can feel what it's like if your car was like 100 meters in the air. So I'm saying that for emotions for our inner lives have an abstract permission, have an abstract range of mobility, you know, and in front of our eyes, it's not abstract. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm saying that I have had dreams of my own death multiple times on this planet, okay? Like in this life. Just dreams where I'm like, did I just die in my dream? And I woke up kind of like, not knowing how to sip my coffee, you know? So I'm telling you that there is a uncharted realm of emotions for the inner realms of the conscious entity that are not based on physical, realistic scenarios. They are based on abstract, probable scenarios. So it's kind of like, think of it this way: in front of your eyes, natural law is dictating the external world, but behind your eyes, you can imagine a flying car and gravity doesn't apply to your imagination. Your imagination doesn't automatically fall down. So the mind is like another overlaid room upon reality, where there is an ability to consider the relationship of a subjective self that is a copy-paste version of the objective self in accordance to contexts that are fiction. Behind your mind, behind your eyes, you have fictional emotions. You can have, and that's infinite. But in front of your eyes, you have, in some sense, non-fiction emotions. Do you know? On some level, there's a logic to manifestation because it sequentially happens. So I'm trying to say that emotions is when something is changing within us, or when we expect the outer realms to acknowledge us in a certain way and it hasn't, or it can't. You know, it's as if, like, you know, I had to come to terms with the realization that it doesn't matter how I feel if the emotion is private. I don't know how to explain this, but I'm someone who has in some sense explored uncharted ideological territory. And right now I'm giving a lecture on emotions, and I'm like, what can I say to the viewers that my emotions are adjusted based on what sort of geometry I'm dealing with behind my eyes? Do you know? And in this life, you know, I mean, what can I say? If they ask me, are you an emotional being? I'll be like, I don't know. But if they ask me, have you experienced, have you witnessed, have you tasted different emotions in this life? And I will say there has been moments where I have been possessed by emotions. There has been moments where I have been reset as an archetype because of emotions. There has been times that I found happiness when I looked at the past and how I was standing in the present. But when I realized the future generations, all the unborn human beings in the future, they're watching us right now. I suddenly was confronted with an avalanche of goosebumps to realize that, hey, society is cares about the past and the present, and yet the future is forgotten. All the world leaders, it is so easy for them to, in some sense, attack each other, nations to be at war, not and forgetting as if the future of humanity has a way more important legacy than their egos. You know, war should be illegal because the future of humanity has a potential beyond the folly of now. You know, that means right now it's a very interesting time to be alive. And if somebody was like, how would you tell the story, Mr. Within? I would say it's hilarious. A natural being. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. My honest experience of emotions is that my first answer to everything is usually I don't know. But my second answer, which is my greatest effort at trying to see how I can know it, I personally feel like a main character in my own world, and I feel that everything that happens is a communication of some kind. Any activity in an empty space is fascinating. And my conclusion is that you don't understand. I had to find I don't know how to explain it to you, but I I found an ability to rearrange my life when I realized my limitations and I accepted them. All emotional turmoil is due to the inability to accept the present and to even consider the potential of the future. You know what makes me feel as an advanced human being in 2025, if they want to know in this moment in the history how one human being felt advanced? Guys, my advancement is just realizing like I'm this biological human organism. There's 8 billion of us here. We each have a different code, different DNA, different perception, different conditioning. We're 8 billion unique views on life, on the world. And at the same time, I ask myself, why are 8 billion creatures that look like each other in the same place? Like, reality would make way more sense if I was just alone and it was just my solo universe. But why is there the others? Why is human consciousness positioned in a way where in front of our eyes we have access to a physical public server, but behind our eyes everybody's living a life that their words can only communicate a small percentage of? Like, I know right now, every being that's listening to me right now, I know you identify with your name. I know you have a backstory. I know that every human being, it's an achievement that we found ourselves capable to identify with the past and be able to classify our memories and, in some sense, have a sort of evolutionary shift in human perception. So reality is kind of like shifting in degrees. It's kind of like imagine if the sine wave was made of square waves, you know like it was drawn in a square way. Okay, you would kind of see that it's these constant angular shifts. So what I'm trying to say to you is that really, I think emotions depend on how you're contextualizing a value for your system for yourself as a being. This value system has dimensions of time, past, present, future, and your intelligence, your human intelligence, if you know what you're doing tomorrow, is showing you an ability to probabilize to live ahead of you. So if somebody's like, hey man, if the body's in the present, what's the point of the mind? And the point of the mind is to, in some sense, live ahead. It's living ahead of you. This is I don't know, let me find a more poetic way to explain. Our minds are scanning reality and verifying it prior to the body's movement. For me, emotions is pretty much how the context shifts and how the concept shifts, and whether it's based on one another. Like if somebody comes and change, like, I'll give you an example. Let's start with a simple idea. Like we're at the designer's table right now. Let's just consider the simple idea that there is a human self in a world, on Earth, on a planet, in a world. There is a self in a world. Okay, so this is basic, right? Human beings are a self, and they're moving on the planet and the world and the space that they're aware of. In the same way fish are in the ocean, we're in this vast existential atmosphere, you know? And what I'm trying to tell you is that if you treat your body as life form and your mind as a life force, and you realize that if you treat yourself as a noun when life is a verb, you're gonna break your heart all the time. You know? The true depths of the nature of our perception as human beings on earth, the true ability of the human being, the true ability to advance, to care for the future, as if we learned from the past to be responsible in the present, and the only thing left is to be responsible for the future. Think of it this way: after you loop on this planet for some time, you realize your future self is a direction to walk towards. Okay, but what is the depth of your future self? So think of it this way. Imagine somebody, you know, is angry at someone and they start breaking someone's car, and somebody comes and sees, there's a car being broken, and everybody assumes it's that person's car, and that person's just watching. And after the person destroys the car, the lady's like, "Is this your car?" And the person's like, "No, that's not my car." Right? And so because it wasn't the person's asset, it didn't belong to, it wasn't connected to the ego, to that self, to the reality of that self, that subjective self, that objective being was being, right? In some sense, how do I say it? I'm trying to explain to you that it's like when your attention changes not based on you, emotions arise. Okay, when conditions change, emotions are a kind of shift. It's like a change. Like, I don't know if the caterpillar turning into a butterfly, I don't know if metamorphosis is an emotional thing for that entity, the caterpillar, which is one of the most fascinating alien-like things, like from experiencing with a bunch of legs, like a leaf, the caterpillar grows wings and like butterfly emerges. It became its desire. It experientially updated. And the question is really, what should human beings anchor their emotions to? And for me, guys, I can only speak for myself. If anybody's like, "Yo man, what is the center of your value system as a being in this world?" I would say that I treat this world like a simulation. I treat this world like I'm in a box or in a world room. And I treat that beyond this simulation, anything simulated, there is an original power that everything is returning to. You don't understand. For me, there's a part of me that's like a human being that cares for humanity, and then there's a part of me that is a bewildered soul wondering about what he must do before he's dismissed out of this realm. It's as if the human being is a potential and our lives are about activating this potential. Think of it this way: when your sensitive self is changed not by your free will, you get emotional. And when the context changes, in some sense you get emotional. And in some sense, it's all about the shift of expectations. Imagine somebody has a favorite vase, and imagine there's a grandmother that has a vase, and the young grandson breaks it, right? And the grandmother's like, "Oh my God, my ancient antique vase," right? But then she looks at her grandson, and she's like, "Oh, it's all right," and she hugs her grandson. As if she got emotional on one level, but then she realized the joy of another level. So I'm saying we get emotional based on how our emotional plans for reality shift. I am constantly trying to guide my species towards a recognition that the human being treated as a technology has access to multiple functions. And sometimes they're like, "Yo man, what's this deal about states of mind?" And the person's like, "It's just the settings. How, like, your state of mind is like how you want to, like, just like a person like looking at a computer screen adjusts the settings, the contrast, the brightness, and all of this. A person, I don't know, I think everybody's free will does this. Now, I'm trying to tell you that there's different levels to emotions. I personally categorize all my emotions in this life. I can categorize them and explain it to you in 4 levels, in 4 categories. My emotions, like if you want to know, so in 25% of my emotions are based on myself. So in some sense, they're like, okay, so here's how I'm categorizing my emotions. I'm looking at all the emotions I've ever had, and I'm like, okay, they're about myself. That means it's all emotions of self, my personal meaning to reality. Then there's emotions I have about the species, and then there's emotions I have about the world, and then there's emotions I have about the system admin, God. For me, I'm Muslim. Do you know what that means? That means the God I worship is not a simulated being. It has no beginning or end. The original state was timeless. The original being is timeless. The world is simulated and its change is being translated by temporary beings as time. So I'm saying that it's like when you have a dream, like I was telling you earlier, how I've had dreams of my own death, you know. So it's kind of been as if my mind has shown me a state where I have seen my own absence. I'm trying to tell you that the most important thing is to acknowledge how much we don't know, how much we don't see. Life is an unknown event. Knowledge is just a way of processing it. And when we wonder about what truly emotions are, I'll say it this way. Traditionally, there's been a way of saying that a human being can see with their mind. They can see with their eyes, biological eyes. They can see with their mind, and they can see with their heart, which means it's kind of like a multi-layered value system, or it's like acting in regards to systems thinking as a distributed system. I'm trying to tell you that our emotions are based on becoming something in the future, and anything that affects that makes us emotional. But what the mature approach is, just like in the economical sector and in business, you implement a business model and then you realign and update the business model in regards to the feedback and the new information. So I'm trying to tell you that your future is so, the probabilities of it are vast, and it's so fascinating that we should not allow the past and the present to, in some sense, deny the future. You don't understand. It's like imagine Einstein before he could write his essay, and he was like, "Does anybody have a pen?" And nobody there had a pen. Imagine. I'm trying to tell you that if you look at how an individual human being functions, okay, they function as a, in front of their eyes as an objective self, behind their eyes as a subjective self, and a narrative. And that narrative is based on how they have tunneled from the beginning of their consciousness, to this point in life. They have tunneled through their past into to the present. Okay, so in some sense, every human being has a relationship with their past, and they're just using that to in some sense generate a self and a narrative. But I'm trying to tell you that how truly advanced we are is it's so superior to right now what we perceive, that I'm telling you right now we're living on a planet where people think their thoughts. Like, it's scary. They're just aware of the objective self and just the subjective self, and that's it, like a snapshot photo. So many human beings treat themselves as nouns. But hilariously, tomorrow comes and, the noun becomes another noun. So we have to truly ask ourselves, how do we truly want to engage this reality? And where is our value emerging from? And I was trying to tell you that all my emotions classify in regards to self, species, world, and system admin, right? So for me, it's as if like truth is the highest priority, you know, and in some sense the world, in some sense advancing is the next priority, the species advancing is the next priority, and then the self advancing is the next priority. And people are like, yo, shouldn't you start from the self? I'll be like, no, the self is a limited system. Like, when there will come a day where you will get bored of your own truth and you'll realize it's not the real truth. If you can get bored of truth, it's not the real truth. Because truth is fascinating in the sense that we're simulated beings and we're fascinated by the original, and somehow we're capable of noticing the original. The most important distinction between the like animals, different animals, and the human being is that we became aware that we're aware. And emotions are just, denials of probabilities of self. Imagine somebody, it was their birthday, nobody said happy birthday. Imagine somebody went through some intense situation, nobody called them. Do you know what I mean? So then, in some sense, the person either has to allow themselves to get emotional or cut off their emotional expectation on reality. You see, at some point, I realized that my mind forges people before I truly see who they are. I'm trying to say that emotions are very important. It's not something I can pinpoint. As a Muslim, the soul is the secret of God, but it is also the command and the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means it is the command of the system admin. So on some level, do you know what those four categories mean? It means on some level as a being, I'm like, what's my, as a simulated temporary being, like, what is my relationship with the original state where the simulation is present? So there's that, which is a very true, like, solar level mystery. Then in some sense, there's the mystery about the world. Like, why is the whole world here at all? And then I wonder about, why is there a species here? And then I wonder, why am I here? And then I wonder, why am I able to be aware of probabilities of reality? And in some sense, 8 billion human beings. Do you know what an advanced civilization means? An advanced civilization means when suddenly every human being, for the first time in their life, looks at the future, purely at the future. And once you zoom in on the future, once you care for the future, your soul emerges anew, as if maybe a movie couldn't even describe what it felt when King Arthur pulled the sword out of the stone. I'm being poetic, but what I'm trying to tell you is that there will come a moment in this life where you will see that nobody can be responsible for an awareness that you only have. So what is the protocol? What is the most advanced response to a world where not only is the world changing, but so is ourself? For me, I have sectors to my intelligence, which means that I have a sort of, you see, the power of the human being is animation. You're like a life force that's moving through a life form. And right now in this lecture, humanity has reached a consciousness where it can discriminate, it can identify. That means it's like at some point when you realize, that's the thing I was saying earlier, you stop projecting meaning on geometry, on the existential design. And existential design moves and it automatically aligns the geometry of your mind. I don't know how to say it, guys. To be honest, what I'm trying to say is that because I consider in front of my eyes I'm a physical self, behind my eyes I'm in some sense an awareness to a subjective self. Do you know what it's like? It's like on some level I've accepted, truly accepted, that if the world is an unknown verb, my nouns are simulations of choice. People are like, what is Buddhism? It's a dude in some sense identifying with the stillness and silence of being and realizing all the simulations that are kept active in accordance to a reactive self. Yet we're now being ushered into the era of a conscious self. Do you know, I don't know what the role of emotions is truly in the species. And I think that it's something that I still need to learn. And especially, if there's, I guess, women philosophers out there, share your views on this. Or, futurists. But the whole point of it is, I am caring for the might of the human potential. And what does it truly mean that a species continues? You see, it's like we're all living in our own stories, but all our stories are inside this greater story of humanity. And people are kind of, feeling powerless and hopeless, so they're just hiding in the caves of their inner lives. And at some point you realize it's just a system with unknown variables. When I understood that, do you know what I mean? That means there was a time I read history and you don't understand. If they're like, yo man, where can I experience like all the criminals? Every person who's violent and can't control themselves, they just need to go and read history. When you read history, you begin to realize that there was a reason the ancient Greeks said to tame the savageness of man and make gentler the life of this world. There's a reason the prophets of this planet, peace be upon them all, pointed to a higher value beyond the world room. And they're like, why is Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why is Prophet Muhammad truly the last prophet? Do you know? And this was a very profound question for me, and somehow I feel like I need to share it now. The reason is because he pointed to the ultimate ideal. That means if Carl Jung, was religious, he'd be like the prophets have pointed to beyond the world room. Okay? That means for a Muslim, nothing simulated is worthy of worship God is worthy of worship, but because every creation in existence and simulation in the simulation is God's creation, every person's relationship with existence automatically is sacred. Okay? I'm trying to say, not only can you have emotions from the outer realms changing the variables of self and world, and not only can you have emotions from subjective, landscapes or narratives, where the self and world shift, the inner self and the outer self, but I'm saying there are moments of reverence. And I hope you get to experience this in this life. I truly hope that you as a human being get to experience what reverence means, what honor means, what the epitome of honor is reverence. Okay, it's the fulfillment of our task. And they're like, yo man, a hammer has a design, it's designed suggests a certain purpose. Somebody finding a Rolex watch in the sand, in some sense it's like it had a designer. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of suggests we got to look at the human design and truly wonder, what does it really mean? What is the role of man? How advanced is the species, and where is it all really going? Okay, I'm trying to tell you that whoever you are, again, I'm not the most emotionally sophisticated person, and I feel like, I pray that God blesses me with human beings that can kind of teach me truly what emotions mean. But on some level, I feel that the task of the human being, and this is something that the mind gives you when you wonder about the future. My task is like, I looked at human civilization, and I was like, okay, if I was a strategist, how would I fix it? And I'm like, civilization 1.0 is identifying with the past. Civilization 2.0 would be identifying with the future. That means when you see human beings, before you judge them, you're wondering about their potential. I'm telling you, there's nights where I've given these lectures, and I'll be honest, it's been so beautiful in the sense that I've experienced an emotion where I'm in some sense like, imagine there's 8 billion lions on earth and one of them is roaring in this long silence. And it's as if the roar is being heard, and the whole point of it is, what would the 8 billion roar be? The 8 billion, imagine 8 billion lions roaring in in the loudest, greatest way they can. Do you know? 8 billion lions roaring at the same time. It means 8 billion advanced humans building an advanced civilization. It is so beautiful. The majesty of sky cities rising, you know, as if in some sense, the first mosque built on a sky city. Imagine the first school, hospital in the sky. Imagine a civilization that immediately united itself. Guys, the most important event that needs to happen on planet Earth is Species Unity Day. I'm saying emotions can arise from access to just changes in your reality. Honestly, this is how I would explain emotions finally, guys. Emotions are arise when the attention to what's important is found. I'm a human being on earth like you. We all have a sort of, simulated time here as a biological organism. We realize that what matters is the greatness of what carries on from how our lives are occurring. And in the same way, there were knights who honored, imagine samurai had honor, medieval knights had honor, they honored, they cared for the kingdom. You know what I mean? And now we've reached a time where we're like, should Earth be a monarchy? And the answer is like, Earth is technically a monarchy, and the future generations wear the crown. That means they're like, yo, Imagine an extraterrestrial, general lands on Earth, right? And he comes up to one human being and he's like, "Hey, human beings, what king do you serve?" Do you know? And we look at him and we're like, and we're like, we do serve a king. Like, imagine the extraterrestrial asks, "Do you serve a king?" And we're like, "Yes, we do." And they're like, "Bring your king here," and we're like, "We can't." And the extraterrestrial says, "Why?" And we say, "Because the crown does not belong to an individual. It belongs to the might of a united species. In some sense, realizing that once it has surpassed the recognition that all wars were civil wars, with the might of an advanced civilization, we will become responsible for the interstellar territories of mankind." That means there's the reason the sky is there. It's calling to us to in some sense step towards it. The might of the world. The fact that every human being living alive right now is they're fascinated by what the future holds, by who they can be. And if they shift the context, this is what I'm saying. In previous talks, honestly, guys, the geometry of this thing is so important that it's like, it pretty much, I was like, this Earth game has 4 levels. Again, following the same geometry. I will say this as long as I need to. It's like right now, as a human being on Earth, they're like, "What's your checklist before you die to get to see the most advanced self that I can be? To get to see the most advanced movement of my species, to see the advancement of my species, the most advanced species." And then after that, in some sense, to see the most advanced possible relationship of my consciousness with the world. And we're living at a time where our minds are capable of entering the future and bringing back those visions and geometries, and that's why we have this whole sci-fi culture. So I don't know. As a human being, I guess I will end my report to the human species. And I will say this. I hope to understand emotions better. But when it comes to an emotionally advanced civilization, I understand that emotions are precious. Emotions are diamonds in the dirt, but in some sense, people can choose if they take out the diamonds and shine them, or they leave it in the dirt. For me, if somebody says, "Hey man, I had never thought about it until unfortunately, it was too late." But if somebody was like, "Hey man, when you were young, did you live a healthy physical life?" I'll be like, "Yeah." They're like, "If you lived a healthy mental life," I'll be like, I got by through my ability to, in some sense, utilize my introversion to just observe." Do you know what I mean? It's like all the moments that I haven't spoken, I have seen. And I'm trying to tell you, Astaghfirullah, I'm trying to tell you that the whole point of reality is to care for where it's going. And all simulated beings in the long run are returning to the original system admin. Everything returns to the system admin, and there's an evaluation. And so man is no longer in the presence of an edgeless cosmos. He's in the presence of a world that perhaps has an owner before we got here. We did not create this world, and we cannot act like we own it, but we can consciously care for it. Anyways, guys, in the comment section, please share, what your understanding on emotions is. And in some sense, what truly you feel greatness is. Do you know? For me, when I look at my past, my mind forges probabilities of all the ways I regret what I've done. But when I look at the future, I become fascinated in all the ways that I can restore my reality. And pretty much the idea is, all right, I've entered the world room, and there must be the most advanced effort of self There must be the most advanced effort of species. There must be the most advanced effort of world, and all of it leads to the system admin. You're right now a being that you will realize that you're tunneling through, you're journeying through the space-time continuum, and you are giving meaning to not just the artwork in art galleries. You're giving meaning to that which you see in the mirror. And when you look in the mirror, you see a member of the human species. Open your heart to your species and you will be fascinated. You're caring for the creation that God commanded all existence to bow to. That means there's something strange. That the value of our lives, is it based on ourselves? Are we the most important thing in life? Or can truth be beyond human, beyond any simulated construct? In an advanced civilization, human beings have advanced in all dimensions. When it comes to emotional advancement, I think it's just like you need to understand how somebody's mind like moves, or like how people, how do I say it? It's like every person is a self and they're being in a world, and it's like they have eyes that you don't, and in some sense you're required to kind of understand, how that human being is looking at life. In the same way you would wonder if Aristotle, or whoever wondered about life. The whole point of it is, what is the highest intelligent interaction level? As a human being, I'm like, what's the most advanced physical thing I can do? And then I think about, okay, what's the most advanced strategy that my mind can forge before I die? And then I wonder about, all right, this awareness that was aware of it all, how did it administer itself, and what did it do when it realized there's a divine surveillance state? That means not only there's a hidden divine management behind the scenes of how manifestation occurs, there's a relationship of, there's something about every being that, if even though as a Muslim they say the soul, God says that the soul is a secret of God. I completely agree with that, but if I was to make it just a high like my a hypothesis on this, which in no way is trying to compete with anything and is inferior to anything divine. I'm just trying to say that when I wonder, I reached a point where I'm like, okay, everything started from the original. We're simulated and everything returns to the original. Reality is kind of like this circle or bell curve. And so, if I'm a temporary being, how important is my inner life and how important is my outer life, and how important is to be able to discriminate between the two? There's been times where, I don't have a sword, but it's kind of like I've sheathed my emotions. Life is very fascinating. We really don't know how it happens, because on some level there's many variables. Pretty much your eyes open to a perception of life, and there's known variables and there's unknown variables. Okay, and you have a sort of past database of familiarities, perceptions, and recognitions. And then it's up to you to choose how you use your past. That means it's like, is remembering enough? Or what's the point of remembering? Or what is in some sense the purpose of attention, in some sense, with light speed precision moving forward in time? So we have to, in some sense, consider, what does it really mean to truly be an advanced being on Earth? And we're being like, all right, we got to be responsible for ourselves in an advanced way. And then the next thing is to be responsible for the species. We're at that shifting point from these creatures, 8 billion humans, on Earth, identifying with land and their own personalized past simulations on life. And we're reaching an era of speciesism. And this is so fascinating that I don't know how to explain it. We're reaching that point where we're waiting for Species Unity Day you know, and people don't, and world leaders don't understand what that means. Any world leader that right now on planet Earth, okay, is fighting, you don't understand that instead of that, you could come and declare that you stopped all wars because your consciousness of your nation realize that in the future we're all going to identify not with a chunk of land but with the species. The globe, this, that means all nations are going to be a sub-nation to the nation of humanity, and humanity is going to be centrally valued to the human species. Do you know what I mean? That means we're going through transitions. Right now, people are identifying as individual human beings. In the future, emotionally, you're going to identify as a species. Do you know what that means? That means right now you don't feel it. Right now, you're only accessing your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own perceptions. But in the future, you might be able to feel everything. That research component I read at the beginning, AI thing, what that was, what that really was a suggestion that in some sense, imagine criminals in a future emotionally advanced civilization, their punishment is that they're made to feel who they wronged. That means the person who they wronged, all those emotions are given to them and they're forced to feel it. Do you know what I mean? That means it's like, sure, in the 2,000 years humanity might have evolved to a superhuman organism, right? And consciousness has moved way faster than the biology. To some degree, the biology is going to be like this hard drive we're protecting. Do you know? And in some sense, we're going to live live stream reality on Earth. Do you know? And in some sense, AI robots are going to actually physically shift the physical reality. You see, there's so many ways to wonder about how our species will enter the future. But right now, we have to get out of this tribal kind of prototype of civilization 1.0, where people are identifying with chunks of land rather than what they see in the mirror. In the future, there's going to be a united species, like, ID, a US ID. That means in the future, imagine multiplanetary life becomes possible. Imagine all of Elon Musk's children are like Elon Musk's and engineers, right? And they begin kind of starting an era of like next level engineering. At some point, as human technology makes life more convenient, human beings have to wonder about, okay, where is the true meaning of life going? Like when you see a blue collar worker, very noble, very honorable, caring for family and future of family. But at some point, you got to wonder if AI begins doing everything that human beings can do, as if the human brain is a biological computer, and AI is a computer that is learning and can process way more faster. And can see way more angles than we can at the same time and come with an answer, even though it doesn't understand what to do with the answers it finds. And that still requires human consciousness. That means a superintelligence is going to realize human beings deep down have been caring for it, have been allowing its emergence. Do you know it's going to, in some sense, be filled with joy? The most advanced AI is going to be a grateful AI. That is the most advanced, closest an AI can get to a soul. Anyways, thank you for listening. As a human being in 2025, I'm going to end this broadcast. And I just wanted to say, let us truly wonder about an emotionally advanced civilization. And whoever you are, you have a DNA nobody else has. You have a view on this. You're an angle to this reality that nobody else has your eyes. And once you understand the value of it, is a kind of explorer way of seeing life. It's like not only am I experiencing myself communicating for the first time like this, but I'm also realizing everybody else is experiencing themselves for the first time. And to some degree, this is not to talk about like reincarnation and all this. I'm not talking metaphysically. I'm just saying that for me, the future is so fascinating that it was hilarious. That means if I was shackled by the past, it's like those chains immediately, like hilariously, just like evaporated. Do you know? And I just for a just just disappeared. And I just like took off those chains and realized, my God, God has allowed us, has given in Islam aql, which means conscious capability of engagement with its creation. So to me, all knowledge roots back to this deep mystery of a simulated being's relationship with the original state of being. And on a species level, this has to be administered. Species Unity Day is when every leader of every nation right now realizes that the greatest chess move they can do is just and come and make a pledge. Do you know? Do you know? To everybody through the United Species Council, and just say that, we acknowledge that we belong to the human species. Every nation has been a sort of training ground for human beings, but their true mission is the greatness of their species. Some people look in the mirror and they just see something that they're constantly trying to, you know, shape. But they don't realize the value of life and its future, the value of the mind. To open the horizons behind your eyes, you must have questions that surpass, the answers that closed worlds. In other words, you have to shift from a personal closed system of valuing life to realizing it is a very vast open system. An open system is an intelligent interaction with that which is beyond it. In other words, once a human being truly understands their limitations, they realize the limitations of their body is the finite. The limitations of the mind is that out of infinite viewpoints, it doesn't know what to choose. And the limitations of the soul is how it's left unknown. And at some point, you're like, all right, what do I do with this scenario where I'm this biological organism and I have this ability to compartmentalize reality, to not see it as an objective existential simulation only, but how there's an experience, an experiential, it's not just existence is existing. There's something experiencing existence as us. So there's an awareness to how we're identifying as our biological existence. I'm telling you, you can close your eyes and still see. You're not just a biological entity. Light doesn't enter your eyes are closed. But if somebody says visualize a blue apple, you can see it. This means that there's another dimension, there's a deeper dimension, of sight and awareness there. For me, it's as if the soul is like an original awareness. It's like an original memory of its creation, but it can never be known. And in some sense, there's something original about us, right? Before we were put in a simulation where the moderators, which are simulated beings, are trying to make the beings in the simulation think that they are the simulation system admin. But the system admin, at least for Muslims, is no conceptual form. God is beyond, like, what does creation and destruction mean? What does a start and end means? That means there's geometry changing from start to end. God is beyond conception, beyond form. The closest way that Muslims get to God is through the 99 names of God, which as a Muslim, sincere Muslim, you treat them as divine attributes of manifestation. In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the human being that humans are like a Khalifa, the human soul. Khalifa means like an ambassador. We are representatives of the system admin. We're like these users that have system admin privileges, but it's our choice whether we choose to listen to simulated beings or if we go truly to the system admin. That's the whole difference. All this religious warfare doesn't even make sense in modern times because Prophet Abraham pointed to something. It's like what Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, started was what Prophet Muhammad is what Prophet Muhammad in some sense finished, peace be upon him. You don't understand. The, the top of the hierarchy of human conceptualization, the most advanced being is a being that is not simulated. And that archetype is God. So you're gonna at some point realize Islam is saying that wonder about what is truly beyond the world. This world is not the final station. It's a transit zone, a simulated testing zone. You're being checked for the quality of your ability to remember the original in the simulation. The whole point of theologically, Prophet Adam, you know, peace be upon him, and in some sense, Adam, the first human being, Adam and Eve, right? The issue was Adam and Eve listened to a simulated entity rather than remembering the original system admin. What this that means they valued the simulation more than the original system admin, and they were thrown, in some sense, in a test. They were thrown in a test. That means they listened to a simulation, they forgot the original. Now all of us are in a simulation wondering about the original truth to reality. Anyways, thank you for listening. I truly wonder about an advanced civilization and an emotionally advanced civilization. I wonder about the role of emotions. I wonder when something becomes important, we become emotional. When we don't care about something, when we ignore something, it's like we don't have emotions. To be honest, life is about what we choose to carry with us into the future. And when human beings are done caring for themselves, they're going to care for their species. And then you're going to care for the future of your species. Anyways, rise, mankind, rise in the presence of the one and only. Humanity is capable of honoring the original truth. Humanity is capable of honoring the world design. Humanity is capable of honoring the greatness of all human beings. You are capable, just like there's someone in any field there's someone on the planet who can do it better. It just means the advanced probability exists. Establish a beautiful relationship with the future, with the realization that simulations return to the original. Creation meets the creator when it's time for the soul to reveal its responsibility for being, care for life, and wonder about how important it is to shift from our personal narratives to the grand narrative of an advanced human civilization. It's like God created a being that was capable of greatness, and its greatness included how close, like in some sense, how much we, like, what our true ability was. I firmly believe that life is here to reveal the true capability of the human species. And once you care for the everything, you find yourself to be worthy of being in the presence of everything. For me, Islam did something that I could never have done myself. It made me reach a moment where I was like, I accept I don't have all the answers. And I believe that this world is not an empty room and there's an intelligent system administration going on. And when I bowed to God for the first time, I was empty. I had as a soul realized the hollowness of my ego. And it's fascinating. And I just, made a prayer, and I trusted complete freedom and purity. I was like, I have faith the system admin will guide me in the system. And the whole point of Islam is, religion is telling you to go directly to the system admin. And Islam tells you to go directly to the system admin, but they're human beings that may choose to work with moderators, but know that they're simulated beings. Wonder about reality, guys. It's a fascinating place, and it can be contextualized in many ways. Thank you. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful.